So let's get started today. So how is generative AI shaping the way we work and create? So that's what the topic of today is at. So before we get started, let me explain a little bit about myself. I'm Hamlet Azarian. I'm a lifelong learner, and I've been spent my whole career helping international B2C and B2B businesses across various industries. I've helped venture-backed startups from the pre-seed to early stage and Series A and B. I've been working with them to help them discover their overall data-driven, full funnel growth strategies, and we've helped these startups raise close to $250 million in funding across numerous different industries. In my 20-year experience, we've made these different growth engines where we combine creative and analytical methods for delivering proven, repeatable results. Significant growth starts with a growth mindset and is executed through rapid experimentation, always using data to drive the path forward. Over the years, we've helped our clients dominate the digital landscape through high-performing, consumer-centric marketing strategies that utilize cutting-edge growth tactics. Thanks for joining us today. Today at Growth Labs, which is our monthly webinar series where we discuss some of these cutting-edge tactics, processes, or lessons learned over the years. So today, the presentation will be balancing a little bit of storytelling. We will also have 2 demo sessions, and we will also have throughout interactive polls throughout. You'll also be able to see that we have a Q&A section, Q&As, so feel free at any time to ask any questions you have. We'll try to address them during the presentation. If we don't get all of them during the presentation, we'll definitely save some time for at the end. We also have a chat feature, so feel free also to ask questions in the chat feature as well. So what is generative AI? So the way I like to explain generative AI is, I have a 9-year-old son. His name is Sebastian. So we were one day sitting at home, and one thing we do every night is he's part of this book club. So every night he would come home and he has to read a book. It's usually anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes. So one night when we were having our bedtime story, I wanted to see if I can explain generative AI to him. So I was telling him a little bit of story about the robot that he also has. And then Sebastian, loves to read. It's not done every night. We try to encourage it. But some nights when we were sitting there and reading, I started explaining to him, I'm like, Sebastian, imagine you're a robot. Robo, let's call him. Imagine Robo had read this book for you. What would you think of that? And he got a little bit excited, like, oh, that'd be cool. And then I said, not only had he read the book, and Sebastian, he likes to read collections of stories. And right now he's reading The Magic Tree House. I said, what if he had read all of the books in The Magic Tree House? Then he got really excited. So he's like, oh, he knows all the stories? I'm like, yeah. And then I said, now imagine that not only had read all the books in The Magic Tree House, he had read all the books that's on your bookshelf. He got even more excited. He's like, wow, that's really possible? I'm like, yeah. And then on top of that, not only has he read all of those books, he's read all of the books that your school wants you to read from now to forever. He's like, oh my God. And then on top of that, he's watched every video, he's listened to every music, he's read anything that exists and consume all this. He's like, wow, Dad, is that really possible? I'm like, yeah, that's actually possible. So in a way, that's what generative AI really is. These models have been trained on this raw data set, and they've been able to consume all this information, and they're now able to allow us to be able to prompt or ask them questions and be able to generate and create new works of art from it. So imagine one example or use case could be if you were stuck on a creative writing assignment for school, you can use a generative AI model by asking it, write a story about a robot on a mission to save the planet, and it should be able to create a story for you. Another would be or bedtime stories like Sebastian. We can even ask it, tell me a story about Prince who goes and fights a dragon, and it would be able to tell you a story along the lines of that as well. So what is driving this? What are some of the key components of generative AI, right? So it's really neural networks and generative models, and as well as natural language processing. So let's first get into what I call generative adversarial networks. So continuing this conversation with Sebastian, I started now playing a game with him to see if he could understand what a particular model is, which is the generative adversarial networks. So I said, hey, Sebastian, let's play again. I want you to draw a picture. So he's like, okay, cool. What kind of picture should I draw? I'm like, oh, well, why don't you draw a picture of a dog? He's like, okay. And then I'm like, every time you get the picture right and it looks like a dog, I will give you a point. He's like, okay. And then, but I'm like, if you don't get it right, you don't get a point. So Sebastian starts drawing a picture of a dog. He does his best to get it right, but unfortunately something's off. The ears are not right. The tail is off. The body is not correct. So he looks at me. He's like, Dad, do I get a point? I'm like, no, sorry, Sebastian, you don't get a point. Sebastian gets frustrated, but he does the right thing. He asks why. What did I do wrong? And then I explain it to him and I show him. I'm like, well, this is slightly off. This is slightly off. And that is slightly off. And then he tries again. So the second time around, he gets the ears right, but the rest is wrong. He asks that, did I get a point? I say, no, you didn't. Tries again the third time, tries again the fourth time. And each process, as he's learning what he needs to do better, he's able to get to a point where he's actually creating a picture of a dog. Now he starts getting points and he gets rewarded for it. That, in essence, is what generative adversarial networks do. So they allow some use cases for this is to create realistic images, sounds, and other types of data sets. So you imagine you can build a new video game, or you can create computer-generated art, or you can even design new drugs and medicines. This is one element of these models that can help sustain that. Another example is how variable autoencoders. So I continue this path with Sebastian. I said, all right, let's play another game. Now let's bring your mom into the equation. And I said, let's play a game and let's see if mom can guess the colors. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're going to go to your room. We're going to look at the Play-Dohs and we're going to pick 3 different colors. And we're going to try to do something that we can describe these colors to mom. So mom is able to understand which color it is. If she gets it right, you get a point. He's like, amazing. Okay, let's go. So we go to the room. He picks the 3 colors, blue, green, and red. He first goes to mom. And he's like, mom, let's play this game. Can you guess what color I am? And then she's like, sure. She's like, I'm the color of the sky. Mom right away says blue. He gets so excited. He's like, Dad, do I get a point? I'm like, yeah, you did a great job. So by him taking the color and explaining it as the color of the sky, what he was doing at that point is he was taking that information and he was basically encoding it or changing it and simplifying it. And then when mom was actually taking the information, she was actually acting as part of the decoder, and she was actually taking what he said and being able to relay what the original color was. So in essence, this is how variable autoencoders work. So why are they great? Well, they do a couple things for us. So they are able to help us make recommendations. They are able to potentially suggest what movies we might like. They are able to help scientists understand complex data and so on and so forth. So this particular level model is used for these type of use cases. Next is the transformer models. So we talked about variable autoencoders. We've talked about generative adversarial networks. Now let's talk about why we're all here, the transformer models. So continuing this process, I try to explain what transformer models are to Sebastian. So I'm like, okay, we're going to play guess the movie game. He's like, okay, great. I'm like, okay, so Sebastian, do you remember your favorite movie? And he's like, which movie, Dad? And then I'm like, all right. So he didn't remember. So I had to, start giving him clues. I'm like, okay, this game is that I can't name the character, Sebastian. I'm not able to tell you that. I'm not able to tell you anything specific or the title of the name of the movie or anything that will help you understand the movie. He's like, okay. And I'm like, all right, so let me see how I can explain this to him. I'm like, all right, do you remember the movie about the child that got lost? And he looked at me, he's like, Dad, you're silly. He's like, how am I going to remember that movie? And then he was like a little confused. He wasn't sure. Well, I guess my prompt to him was not very specific enough. So I said, okay. Do you remember the movie about the fish and the fish child that got lost? And he was like, oh, sorry, Dad, I still don't know what you're talking about. And then I said, all right, do you remember the movie of the fish that, was on an adventure, but had a really bad memory, and then he got lost? His dad and mom were worried about him, and his dad came after him and found him. He's like, oh, you're talking about Finding Nemo. I said, yes, exactly. So this is exactly how transformers work. So if you're able to basically get better at your prompting skills, which we're going to talk about later on in the process, they're able to take the contextual information that you're providing it and be able to go into vast knowledge of data sets that they've learned and be able to precisely know what context that you're talking about. Now, finally, natural language processing. So why is natural language processing important, right? So if you think about this, there are 3 different areas in generative models that in natural language processes play very well at. One is text generation. So here it's able to write coherent and contextual relevant pieces of text. Next is chatbots and virtual assistants. This is where you would be talking to Siri or having a conversation with Google Home. At the core of this, generative AI models are the virtual assistants you're actually chatting with. The last would be for machine translation. So if you ever travel to a foreign country, or if you're not sure how to say a certain thing and you're using Google Translate, this is when machine translation comes in place. So this is all in token. Natural language processing is kind of the field that's helped us develop and make generative AI and all of these other elements of this to become much more human-like in its essence. So now we're going to take on a poll, and give me a few minutes to also grab a little bit of water. All right, so thanks for everyone for completing the poll. We are 13 minutes in, so we're doing well on time, which is great. Now I'm going to be able to set up, give me 1 second, the screen so we can start taking our first live demo. Okay, so let me screen share again. All right, so one of the demos we're going to do now is I'm going to use, this is obviously ChatGPT. So I'm going to use the regular default GPT-4. It's a newer model. This is on the Plus plan, so this is the pay plan. And I want to use some of the use cases we currently have, which is building out a customer persona. So what I'm going to ask is, let's do Netflix. So we want to build a customer persona for Netflix. Please make sure in this persona we are able to write a story so our marketers and content team can create engaging content and landing pages. Also potential ads. What I'm doing right now is obviously I'm prompting and I'm giving it a starting point. So in addition, please make sure you include value propositions, Facebook ad copies, Google and Facebook ad copies, trust factors, and other items that would potentially cause someone not to want to try Netflix. Before you get started, can you give me 5 potential personas? So at this stage, what I've done is I've kind of set the prompt of where I want to take the conversation. And then I've also told it not to fully do everything, but give me an idea. So here we go. It's already starting with binge watching Betty, a young adult, usually college students or young professionals who love to binge watch. Family Guy Frank, middle-aged parent who's looking for a wide variety of children-friendly content to keep their kids entertained. Nostalgic Nasty, and so on and so forth. So now I actually like Family Guy Frank. So can you now develop Family Guy Frank based on my previous prompt? Please include targeting for Facebook along with my other requests. So now we're going to develop this persona. So it's including, the demographic information, the psychographic information, which is great, the behavioral, the value propositions, what I had requested earlier, the trust factors, which I had requested earlier in the prior ones, barriers to adoptions, other things I should be thinking about, Facebook ad copies, which I had requested earlier, and so on and so forth. And then targeting for Facebook, which is my current request. And now the full out persona is built. So as you guys can see, I was able to get to a point where now I have a full blown out persona. So what else could I do that I have the personas? I can take it to other places. So if I want to build a landing page for this persona, in new highlight. Number. This will be used on the second ad. It's the convention. So now what I'm doing is I'm now creating the next step, which is the landing page. So I'm basically taking, if I was to run the second ad that it talked about before, how should this overall landing page strategy be done so it increases the overall conversion rates? So it's helping me walk through it. The copy obviously is a little bit long, so I can come back and actually shorten the copy, and I can do that with it. But right now it's giving me overall the strategy. So it talks about start your free trial or join and so on and so forth. So another use case potentially would be some email sequences, right? So we were able to get the user to sign up, but not active. So I'm not telling it what to do. I'm just asking some strategies for engagement. So let's see what it says here. So it's now talking about the personalization recommendations, email marketing, push notifications, interactive features, and user profiles, and then also starting to talk about binge watching and so on and so forth, right? So it goes through the whole process and is giving you all the different strategies that you could potentially use to make this user become more engaged. And then lastly, I'll do one now for email marketing since it suggested it. What is a great marketing strategy that you can use? So now it's going to go through a whole automated email sequence, giving us a pure strategy and what are some of the different things we can start doing and recommended days when we should be sending these emails. And then we can go now double click on any one of these things and go even further. So this way we're able to dig another level deep if we choose to and have it actually write the email. So here's exactly, I didn't use any plugins here. The reason this partly worked is because Netflix is a large company and so on and so forth. But what I want to highlight is that what I went from the beginning to the end, and I was able to, through the persona, go further down. So now moving back to the presentation. 1 second to get it there. So feel free to add any questions that you guys have, and we'll make sure we address it at that. So how is all of this working, or what's the new infrastructure that's starting to come around, right? So if you think about the whole tech landscape and where all this is starting to develop, A16Z or Anderson Horowitz, Matt Bronstein, Guido Appenzeller, as well as Martin Casado in January 19th of 2023, this year, wrote an amazing article called "Who Owns the Generative AI Landscape?" In this article, what they highlighted is that there's an infrastructure architecture that's starting to develop, right? And there is the app layer, which is the top layer. There is the models layer, which is the middle layer. And then there's an infrastructure layer, which is the bottom layer. And the bottom layer, that's the actual hardware, with the computer hardware itself. So this the two main players are NVIDIA through their GPU chips, and then Google through their TPU chips. And then there's the cloud platforms that allow for the easy deployment of these models. There's AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, and so on and so forth. And then there's the model layer, which is all the different. In this area, it's broken out in two ways. There's one, the closed source models, which includes OpenAI, and then there's the open source models, which includes Stability and so on and so forth. And then lastly, there's the model hubs. So in the model hubs themselves, there's Hugging Face and so on and so forth. And then in the top layer is the applications, which include things like Jasper and so on and so forth. And then sometimes there might be a full end-to-end, which will be like Midjourney that owns the application engagement as well as the models themselves. So this started becoming sort of what I would consider your high-level tech infrastructure, right? And what that allowed is at the bottom and the middle layer, there really isn't that much competition. So the bottom layer is really focused on a lot of the tech giants. The middle layer, there's a little bit more. But what's really starting to happen is there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of apps starting to get produced, or new apps, or potentially even new categorizations of these apps. So there's the text and writing space, right? In this text and writing space, we have code generation and documentation, we have customer support, we have general writing and content editing, we have marketing and sales copy, we have text and data summarization. In the image area, we have image editing, we have ad collateral, we have design, we have text to image. In audio and video, we have audio editing, text to speech, music generation, summarization and insights, avatars and dubbing. We have video and video, we have generation and animation. We also have editing. We also have MLOps. And then on top of that, we have data and decisions. Here we have creative organization, synthetic data generation, vector search, and curation. So as you can see, there's a lot of different use cases and a lot of apps that are starting to happen. And why is that starting to occur is mainly the timeline of these models and how quickly these models have started to take proliferation, right? So if you look at it in 5 short years, we've had private models and open source models. In 2018, we started the first new wave of these models. And over time, new ones got released. So, it started in 2019, 20, 21, 22, and now 23, with the latest being Raven. So on the blue line, you see sort of the private models, and in the bottom line, you see more or less the open source models. Right around 2020 is when GPT was released, by the way, and it didn't really catch on till about December of 2022. So it was actually out. It was available in beta form, and then it became more publicly available in November, but nothing really caught on until later on, a couple years later, until ChatGPT in itself, took the world by storm, and everybody started seeing it. So let's take another quick poll when we get a chance. So Kaya asked a question while we are taking this poll in regards to, do you have a reference point of specificity of the factors you need to include with the prompts? Kaya, great questions. Yes. So what we will be providing at the end of this is more or less 600 or so prompts that can help you get started for different types of use cases. Everyone in the presentation today will be receiving that. And that is sort of the beginning of the conversation. And so depending on where you want to take, and I will be talking a little bit more in the presentation about prompts. So just if you hang on for a few minutes, we'll definitely get to that part of the presentation as well too. But great question. All right. Thanks for everyone to answering the questions on fine tuning. So let me get started on that now. So what is fine tuning? So the way I like to explain fine tuning is, while all of these models are terrific and great and general, right? That's in nature what they are built in on large data sets, and they continue to be built on larger and larger and larger data sets. They still are not specific to your personalized use case for your company or for what you're trying to solve. So just like a children who likes to play with their toys, some children like to also customize their toys, or they like to add some gaps into their toys. And that's the essence of what fine tuning really is all about, right? So why is fine tuning important? Because it's able to, and I'll give you a silly example here right now. So in this particular example, what you're able to see is if you hadn't fine-tuned and you were to ask the generative models, like, why did the turkey cross the road, not the chicken, it would give you the same answer that the chicken crosses the road, right? To get to the other side. And if you kept on answering it, it still wouldn't understand the context that what you're trying to do is something different or something silly. You're trying to make it fun, right? So then what you can do is you can fine-tune this and provide it information of silly dad jokes or silly jokes in general, and be able to provide it and create your own unique model, and then start asking it new questions. So now when the answers would change, and it would be like, why did the turkey cross the road? Because it was his day to chicken, or to show the chicken that it was possible, or it was the chicken's day off. So I know this is a silly example of this, but it kind of gives you the point, and how this can be used for other types of use cases would be sort of like an email response specifically for your company. So what you can do there is you can look at all the different emails and how customer support has been answering questions. You can then take that and use that data to be able to train it. And now you will have a highly customized email responser speaking in the voice of your organization, and be able to help customer support to be able to answer any other customer queries that are starting to come in. So how does all of this really happen? And I know I kind of alluded to it. It's not that hard anymore. So within OpenAI, there's documentation on how to do this, but they have built-in functionality. All you're doing is you're taking the information and you're creating a JSON object file with the prompt itself. So what is the prompt, or what is the question that you want to ask? And what is the response? What is the answer you're expecting? So you can actually take care, this is my prompt, that this was the question I was asking, and I was asking it in this format. I expect answers like this. And you're able to create this data set, and within that data set, you're able to rerun it, and you're able to build basically a starting point of a trained model for you that can be used for your particular use cases. So so now what is prompting? So answer Kalia's question, right? So I know I've alluded to it. I kind of showcased it a little bit. I showcased it a little bit earlier. So let me kind of explain a little bit more into what it is exactly for it. So the way I like to kind of explain prompting more or less is, think of it as, the more general you are, it becomes really, really hard. So for example, if you wanted to get instructions for a cookie, you can say, hey, can you give me the recipes for a cookie? And it will give you a pretty specific general instructions on how to bake a cookie, but it might not be the cookie that you want. What if you wanted a cookie that was chewy in the inside and slightly crispy on the outside? So that you need to tell it that. You need to say, hey, I want a cookie that's soft in the inside and crispy on the outside, and I only want it to be a specific size. Then it would then give you a much more specific instructions on how to bake a cookie with the right time, with the right degrees, with the right ingredients, and so on and so forth, to get the desired cookie that you actually want. So why is this important, right? So what you really have to look at here is clarity and specificity on these prompts, right? So you don't want to be too vague. You don't want to say, give me blog post ideas, because it's just going to give you a bunch of random ideas. You want to be much more defined. You want to say, well-defined prompts. So something like, give me unique blog posts for a marketing blog focusing on SEO and paid ideas. And then the response would be much more specific to what you're actually looking for. So open-ended versus closed-ended prompts, right? So what are the advantages and use cases here? So if you're looking for much more creativity and you're hitting a writer's block, and you're really not sure where to take it, you would use open-ended prompts. And what this would allow is it would start creating some sort of new ideas that you didn't think about, or some new brainstorming sessions that you can go deeper into, and so on and so forth. If you wanted a specific answer, you can do a closed-ended prompt. You can ask it exactly concise questions that will give it a yes or no, and be able to tell you that this is correct or this is not correct, or at least how it thinks based off of the data set that it's been trained upon. Now, lastly, chaining multiple prompts. So this is one of the things I think you saw earlier in my demo, is how I started with one prompt that had multiple different things inside of it, right? So I was basically showcasing with that, how I was able to go down further and further into the process, as I took one prompt, took it to the next prompt, and then lastly took it to the last prompt itself. So now we're going to get back to another demo. So give me 1 second to set it up. All right. So this time around, I'm gonna use some of the different plugins and show you. So the plugins just came out. So the plugins have been out maybe about 2 weeks or so. So very relatively new. And the benefits of the plugins is now it's able to take you past some of the limitations that was around for most normal use cases. This is if you weren't building your own models, if you weren't trying to write code. This is now giving users more advantageous ways of getting the information that you need or be able to refine what you're trying to do, right? So let me kind of show you how you would go about to do that. Again, this is only available on the paid plans. So here you go to the plugins. You're able to select the different plugins. The limitations here are you're only able to do 3. I'm going to show you guys Link Reader. I'm going to show you and Zapier. We'll stay focused on Link Reader and Zapier. So on, let's say if you're a brand new site, we happen to be one. So where GPT, because it came out in 2020 or so, roughly that's when the agency was formed. So it had not seen our data, it had not crawled our data, so it doesn't know who we are, right? So I can use a plugin like Link Reader, and I can say, please use Link Reader and go to Azarian growth agency.com and let us know who is their target persona. So what Link Reader now does is Link Reader is going to go to the specific URL I've provided it. It's going to go read it. It's going to summarize it, and then it's going to go evaluate it based off of the prompt I provided it. So it's now able to go. You can do this on any website. You can do this on any PDF. You're able to kind of go around and be able to find this information. So the other prompt I will now show is Zapier. So what if you had data that you wanted to look at? So here is a Google Sheet. This is sort of like ads that we normally do. So I wanted to understand like which headlines performing well and so on and so forth. So I'm going to do some analysis now. So I'm going to say, go to use the Zapier plugin and go to that's Google. But before I do that, maybe I don't know how the Zapier plugin works. So let's stop that, right? So this is me, I know it, but I know you guys haven't seen it. So I want to know how to use it, right? So how do I use the Zapier plugin? So you can actually ask. So it's giving us a general guide. This is the plugin itself. It's saying that we can search for actions. We can preview a zap. We can get configuration links. And we can list exposed actions we've already created. And then we can execute specific actions based off of that. So it's reminding you that, hey, you need to make sure you've set these up. Otherwise, you can't use them. And if you want to know what you've set up, you can search all actions. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Can you let me know what actions Zapier plugin? I don't necessarily have typed all that, but I am. So now it's going to do, and it's going to go find all the actions I've already set up. It's going to go hit Zapier, our Zapier paid account, come back and let us know. These are all the things you've already set up. So it's walking me through everything we've done. So we can get many spreadsheet rows, and we can use update spreadsheet rows. We can create spreadsheet rows, and so on and so forth. So it's actually walking us through all the different elements we have. So let's say if we wanted to, get many spreadsheet rows, I could open it up. We've already set this up, so I'm not going to reset it up, but I wanted to show you guys it basically brings you to the section where you can create new actions. You don't have to do it through the interface. You can do it through here. So now going back is we're going to basically get many spreadsheets. So we want to use that, right? So please, we want to use get many rows. What are So now it's actually going to tell us even more. So here are the instructions how to utilize it. It's going to walk you through, make sure you're telling us the columns that you need, making sure you're mentioning the name of the worksheet, what the spreadsheet itself is, and the row counts. And it can do all the way a maximum of 500. So the name of my spreadsheet is Zapier test, the worksheet itself is sheet 1, and so on and so forth. So please, so let's get spreadsheet rows, the columns we want is up to the worksheet is called Zapier test. The spreadsheet is called. This and we analyze what is the best performing headline. Means to evaluate what period. So now it's going to go and find the information, hopefully, but it does. So it's using Zapier. It's going to take the prompt I gave it with the instructions that it need. I didn't follow its sequencing. It's smart enough to be able to understand that as long as I've given it the fields. Let's do this. I can get a glass, some water. So it's asking me that it do it correct. So I need to actually review it. So what I can do is I can click it now, right? So it's also asking you what are some different ways you would like me to answer it. So before we do that, so it doesn't look like it found the spreadsheet. As you can see here, it missed the name. So I need to retell it again. So it looks like it found everything else besides the spreadsheet because the spreadsheet name is Zapier test. So I need to refine that. So I will go back and tell it that. Looks like you didn't find the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is So now I found it. So now I know Zapier test, it knows sheet 1, A to Z, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to run the command. After I've run the command, I can see the data and confirm that it was able to actually grab all the different data it needs. So now I can go back and say, okay, looks like we found it this time. Please go ahead and evaluate it. If I hadn't pressed the execute, it would not be able to do that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So here it goes. It's now taking the information that was in the Google Sheet. It's evaluating it. And for those of us who run ads, one thing that's missing is, as you can see, is cost per impressions. So we could even tell it to calculate that, which is one of the next prompts we will do. Froze. So let me stop generating and regenerate it. So it's going through, it's summarized actually, pizza is really delicious, hamburger is better, why are you not plant-based? I love food. Those are the actual headlines themselves. And it's summarizing them for you. It's saying pizza delicious, hamburger better, why not plant-based, love food. And now it's actually analyzing it. So based on the hamburger better, the headlines from better in terms of revenue generated. However, the love food headline was the highest click-through rate at 28.62, indicating it was the highest, most engaging headline. So it's giving you different evaluations from it. So this was a better response, right? So now I'm going to say, okay, what other ways should I be evaluating this? I noticed that you are missing CPM, cost per impressions, and you also calculate that. So one of the things we were missing was cost per impressions. It's now calculating it for me. So as you can see in this use case, you're able to basically go to different data sets that you might have. You want to do analytics on it. You want to review ad copy performance. You want to remove email performance or whatever it might be. You're able to do this. There are limitations. There's only 500 rows it could take in, but it allows you and enables you to quickly move through a lot of this component, a lot of this data generation and analytics side. And then on top of that, what you can do is you can also start going deeper. So you can say, hey, it says love food was good here, or prior it said hamburger was. You can ask it to come up with new ideas. Since why not? Why? Yeah, I'll leave it misspelled. So it's able to then go and create new concepts for you that you could potentially test. If some of these are too long, you could even tell it that. You could say, hey, these are way too many words. Can you lower it? So we'll do that in a minute. And now it's actually counting the characters for you, showing that it listened to your instructions and it's actually doing it correctly as well. So as you can see with this use case, we're able to analyze our data. From that data, we're able to figure out what's actually working, what's not working. From that, we're able to then go around and start creating new headline copies. And if the headline copies are too long that it initially generates out, we're able to shorten it and make it much more tighter. So then we're able to get into the right proper ad setups. So let me continue on. If you have any questions on this, feel free to let us know. Let me close these different sections in the Q&A, and I'll get back to it at the end of the presentation. All right. So I've been spending a lot of time talking about content creation and analytics, but we haven't really talked about computer vision. They're able, the AI models are able to do this now too, including the generative AI models, right? So they're able to do audio and music through speech synthesis, music composition, audio denoising, and then they're also able to do images through image synthesis, object recognition, and style transfer. So an example of style transfer would be, for example, you have a picture of the Mona Lisa and you want to change overall what it looks like. You can say, hey, take the picture of the Mona Lisa and change it to this particular format or style, right? It might be Van Gogh. And then it's able to do this and create a new original work of art that's completely wasn't created before. And so we'll get more into this stuff in a future webinar, but I wanted to actually highlight some of its elements as well too. And then in addition to that, so what have we talked about today, right? So in vision, you're able to, so generative AIs are able to use their eyes, understand the world, their computers use cameras and algorithms, interpret visual data, and so on and so forth. They can not only understand what they're seeing, but they can also create new visual art as well. So some of the challenges and limitations of generative AI, right? So it's as good as the data it's been trained upon. So what I mean by that, there could be biases in the AI models. So what if, for example, if you were using a facial recognition software and you've only traded on a certain type of ethnic group, it will have a hard time in understanding when a different ethnicity is in it. So for example, I'm Armenian. If it wasn't trained on Armenian imagery and it was trained on something else, let's say from European descent or German or Caucasian, it would have a hard time potentially recognizing who I am, and then there would be bias in towards that data. And then the same thing could hold in languages. If it's trained only on the English language, it might have a hard time understanding the different language components as well. Another is ethical considerations, right? So like the models are getting so good, we have to evaluate and be careful and make sure that we're not trying to fool people. We have to be, there's deep fakes videos that are coming out and so on and so forth that are pretending to be other people, which takes me to sort of another area is intellectual property. So these two things, there's a great example of David Guetta, who's a world famous, DJ, who's been traveling the world and creating lots of music. And in February of this year, he did something incredible that caught so much attention. He had finally been introduced to generative AI, so he spent some time on that weekend. He's like, let me play with this thing. Let me see what I can do. He's a producer, right? So he saw a new instrument, he saw a new opportunity, and he wanted to play with it. So he had a new track that was about to come out, and he wanted to build an intro for it. So he asked it to, hey, can you write me lyrics of Eminem being able to introduce this new track for us? And the model did. It was able to create some great lyrics, the same lyrics that Eminem would be able to sing. And then he went and used another voice synthesizer and said, can you sing the lyrics that this model has created to sound like Eminem? And it did. And then on top of that, he then played it live in a concert in February, and the whole place erupted. Everyone went crazy, and all the fans were blown away. It sounded so real that they thought it was actually Eminem that created, which then also spurred a lot of conversations and topics. Who actually owns the rights here? Is it David Guetta, the creator, who came up with this? Is it Eminem because it's a voice? Is it the models themselves, and so on and so forth? So there's going to be a slew of different conversations occurring on intellectual property concerns and so on and so forth. And lastly, it's computational resources and energy consumption. As I mentioned earlier, these models at this current state are really, really large and take a long time to build, upwards of 2 months, and costs estimated close to $20 million+ to be able to do. That's part of the reason that in the middle layer, there isn't a lot of people playing in that space. So this energy consumption, not only to build the model, but actually to be able to use it is also another consideration to take into account. So finally, the future of generative AI. So where are we headed, right? So where can all of this potentially go? And I've shown you a lot, and it's only the beginning. That's the crazy part. This is like really the first inning of the game, if you look at sort of like a baseball analogy, right? So there's a long way to go. We are just getting started. So some things we can do is we can, integrate with other AI technologies. So what I mean by that is, so imagine generative AI models are working with use reinforcement learning, and you're able to kind of do the combination of the two, and you're able to build autonomous robots. And these robots are able to do become more efficient and more safe, and so on and so forth. Or you can look at different industries and use cases. One could be healthcare. You can use it for drug discovery, where it could generate millions of potential drug compounds to identify new candidates for with desired properties to accelerate the development of model or novel medications, right? Or it can be for entertainment. You can create new characters on the fly, or you can potentially, have them have unique appearances or personalities, and so on and so forth. On top of that, there's going to be advancements in hardware. So with the new advancements of hardware, this is going to become easier to build out. New models are going to be easier to utilize, and they're going to be much faster. On top of potentially content computing is going to make this become much more prevalent, and much more interesting use cases will start coming out. And then finally, ethical and regulatory frameworks. We kind of talked about it earlier, which, I'm sure there will be rules put in place that, to make sure there's fairness and there's no bias, especially if it's being used for loan generation and so on and so forth, or there's transparency and accountability. Maybe the questions of how the model was used, or what are the prompts that are being used to be able to do this, might become much more prevalent that people have access to and understand. So the last poll of the day, if you guys could take a minute and answer this question. Thank you. Wow, so 84% of you said very likely that you will be using it. Appreciate that. So I want to leave it up so questions that people might have. Let me see what are some of the open questions that have come through. So one question was, how much are the Plus and other plans? How do you find the best AI for different applications? So ChatGPT Plus plan is only $20 a month. The other Zapier, you have to be on a premium plan there as well too. That's starts based off of the number of zaps you're using. That could be as low as $29, and it can go up towards anywhere to be 50 or so. Some other questions: is fine tuning only available for DaVinci, not GPT 3.5 and 4? Yes, it is available for GPT. There is also OpenAI documentation that we can share for everyone else if you're interested in fine tuning and understanding where that is. So Sona, let's definitely add that in the follow-up email, because it's a great question, and we can also share an article or blog that we're going to write that could explain that a little bit more in detail. Would in context training be able to do equally as well for fine tuning, or your experience does fine tuning work better? I only ask because in context training is significantly cheaper and training. So yeah, so a part of what you guys saw, I was doing in context training as I was going through the prompting and trying to answer the different questions. So that is limited also as well, because there is a gap in the memory, and there's only so much that you could potentially do, right? So with fine tuning, you're actually able to give it more. So let's say you wanted to categorize, or you wanted to start creating really good subject lines that were specific for your campaigns that you were going to send out. You can give it data that shows, here's the subject line, this is the performance metrics of it, this is why it's potentially working. So you can be adding different parameters to that. You can load that data information in, you can fine tune off of that, and then you can go back when you're asking it those specific questions. It could keep in mind what you've historically done in the past, and it could be able to build off of that. So thanks for everyone for all the great questions. I know we have only a few minutes left, and I want to respect everybody's time. So if there's any other further questions, please do not be shy. Feel free to ask. We're here to help. We're here to be able to answer any questions that you might have. And what you're going to end up getting after this webinar, as promised, is you'll get sort of our 600 plus chat GPT prompts to get you started. It's totally free. We're going to be sending that out. We're also going to be sending you 90 generative AI marketing tools that we've evaluated and looked at. If you're a startup founder that has come here today and has a generative AI model and you're not on one of our list, please feel free to reach out. We would love to review it. We could include it in future releases or have in our blog article, and so on and so forth. So one last thing, one small ask for us. We are growing, we are hiring, we are looking for these 5 different roles. So if you are someone who's interested in joining with us and working particularly in the startup space, these are the different roles we have. marketing and communication specialist, a growth marketer, digital marketing specialist, growth coordinator, content writer. Feel free to go and apply. And as you can see, in our use cases, generative AI is not replacing, we are enhancing the roles, and we definitely have opportunities here for team members to join and be able to partake and use the latest modern technologies. And then lastly, thank you everyone for coming. I did my best to, as promised, to stay within the hour. We're at 11:58. It looks like I delivered on that promise. Feel free to connect with me. Here is a QR code. If you're by the phone, you can feel free to scan. It should take you to the LinkedIn profile, or you can easily search for me at Hamlet Azarian on LinkedIn, and look forward to talking more. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.